Why most people will never own anything again. You wake up one day and realize almost nothing around you actually belongs to you. Not your movies, not your music, not your software, maybe not even your car in the future. You're paying every month for access to things that previous generations owned permanently. And the strangest part? Most people barely noticed it happening. A few decades ago, ownership meant freedom. You bought something once, and it was yours. Today, companies have quietly transformed ownership into subscription. Houses are becoming rentals, cars are becoming services, and digital products can disappear with a single policy update. Even farmers are fighting corporations over the right to repair their own tractors. So here's the uncomfortable question. What happens to a society where people consume everything but own nothing? For thousands of years, ownership was one of the most important ideas in human civilization. If you owned land, tools, livestock, or a home, you had independence. Ownership meant stability, control, security. It meant nobody could suddenly take away your ability to live your life. But over the last 20 years, something massive has changed. Quietly, gradually, almost invisibly. And most people didn't notice it because the system was redesigned to feel convenient. Think about it. There was a time when you bought DVDs, CDs, books, and software. You paid once, and it was yours forever. Today, almost everything is rented. Spotify rents your music. Netflix rents your entertainment. Adobe rents your software. Even video games you purchase can vanish if servers shut down or licensing agreements change. In 2023, Sony removed purchased Discovery content from PlayStation users because of licensing issues. People who had paid for those shows suddenly lost access to them. Not because they broke the law, not because they canceled a subscription. The content was simply gone. And that moment exposed a terrifying reality. In the digital world, buy often doesn't actually mean buy. It means temporary permission. But this shift goes far beyond movies and apps. It's spreading into every part of modern life. Look at housing. In many major cities around the world, home ownership is becoming increasingly impossible for younger generations. Prices have risen dramatically compared to wages. Large investment firms now buy thousands of homes, turning entire neighborhoods into long-term rental markets. In some places, people with stable jobs still cannot afford the down payment for a basic house, and when ownership disappears, dependence grows. If you don't own your home, your landlord controls your living situation. If you don't own your software, corporations control your tools. If you don't own your media, companies control your access to culture and information. The power slowly shifts upward. And what makes this transformation so dangerous is that it's packaged as freedom. Unlimited access, low monthly payments, convenience, upgrade anytime. It sounds empowering until you realize the payments never stop. A person in the 1990s could buy a car, own software outright, purchase physical media, and eventually eliminate many recurring expenses. But modern consumers are trapped in permanent financial loops. Monthly subscriptions for entertainment, cloud storage, productivity apps, smart devices, security systems, and even heated car seats. Yes, heated car seats. In 2022, BMW faced backlash after introducing subscription-based features in some vehicles, where customers paid monthly fees to access hardware already installed inside the car. Imagine buying a product, but still needing permission to use parts of it. That's not ownership, that's controlled access. And the deeper technology enters our lives, the more control corporations gain after the sale. Modern tractors used by farmers are another example. Companies like John Deere have faced criticism over repair restrictions that prevent farmers from fixing their own equipment without authorized software tools. Farmers may spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on machinery, yet legally and technically, they often don't fully control it. Now think about where this trend is heading. Smart homes, smart cities, self-driving cars, cloud-based everything. What happens when every essential tool in your life requires ongoing approval from a corporation's servers? A missed payment could disable features, a policy change could remove access, an account suspension could lock you out completely. And before someone says, well, subscriptions are cheaper, that's exactly why the model works so well. Humans naturally optimize for short-term affordability over long-term ownership. Paying $10 a month feels painless compared to spending hundreds up front. But psychologically, that small monthly payment hides the true cost. Over years, consumers often spend far more while owning absolutely nothing in the end. And corporations love this model because predictable recurring revenue is one of the most powerful business systems ever created. Investors reward it. Markets reward it. Companies become more valuable when customers remain permanently attached instead of making one-time purchases, which means this system isn't slowing down, it's accelerating. And the scariest part is that many people entering adulthood today have never experienced a world built around true ownership. To them, renting access feels normal, temporary feels permanent, dependency feels convenient. But history shows something important. The less ordinary people own, the more vulnerable they become. And that vulnerability doesn't just affect individuals. It changes entire societies, because when millions of people stop owning assets, they stop building long-term security. Wealth becomes concentrated in the hands of the institutions that own the platforms, the housing, the infrastructure, and the data. Everyone else simply pays for access. And once a society becomes dependent on access, control becomes incredibly easy. You can already see the blueprint forming. Streaming replaced physical ownership, ride-sharing reduced car ownership, cloud software replaced downloadable programs, subscription services replaced one-time purchases, even fashion is moving toward rental models in some industries. On the surface, each change feels small, reasonable even, but combined together, they create something much bigger. A generation trained to live without permanence, and permanence matters more than most people realize. When you own something, you gain autonomy. You can modify it, repair it, pass it down, or use it without permission. Ownership creates stability across generations. Your grandparents understood this deeply. That's why previous generations obsessed over buying homes, land, businesses, and physical assets. They weren't just collecting things, they were protecting freedom. But modern economies increasingly reward consumption over ownership. People are encouraged to upgrade constantly instead of keeping products long-term. Phones become outdated in a few years. Software requires continuous subscriptions. Digital ecosystems trap users inside platforms where leaving means losing purchases, history, or convenience. And corporations have discovered something extremely powerful. A customer who owns something can leave. A customer who depends on access usually can't. That's why ecosystems are becoming more closed, more centralized, more controlled. Look at how difficult it has become to fully disconnect from major tech companies. Your files, photos, communication, work, entertainment, and even memories now live on servers you don't control. Entire lives exist inside digital ecosystems owned by a handful of corporations, and this creates a strange paradox of modern freedom. People have more convenience than ever before, while having less control than ever before. You can stream almost any song instantly, but you don't own the music. You can access software from anywhere, but lose it the moment payments stop. You can order transportation instantly, but may never build equity in a vehicle. You can rent lifestyles that previous generations spent decades trying to permanently secure. The system works beautifully for corporations because access never ends. The payments continue forever. And unlike traditional ownership, there's no final point where the customer becomes fully independent. But there's another reason this trend is accelerating. Younger generations are entering economies shaped by rising housing costs, inflation, stagnant wages in many sectors, and increasing debt burdens. For many people, ownership isn't disappearing because they rejected it. It's disappearing because it feels financially unreachable. And when ownership becomes unattainable, people adapt psychologically. They stop seeing it as necessary. They normalize renting everything because the alternative feels impossible. That may be the most important shift of all, not economic, psychological, because systems become permanent when people stop imagining alternatives. Now, does this mean subscriptions are evil? Not necessarily. Some genuinely provide flexibility and lower upfront costs. For many people, renting can make sense depending on lifestyle or income. The issue isn't access itself. The issue is dependency without awareness. Because if people stop asking what they truly own, they may wake up in a future where nearly every part of life depends on continuous permission from governments, corporations, or platforms they cannot control. And once ownership disappears completely, rebuilding independence becomes incredibly difficult. So maybe the real question isn't whether this future is coming. Maybe it's already here, and most people simply haven't realized how much they've already traded away, not through force. Not through laws, but through convenience, the kind that feels harmless, right until the moment access is denied. And honestly, this conversation is bigger than technology or subscriptions. It's about the future of freedom itself. Because throughout history, the people who owned nothing were always the most dependent on those who owned everything. So before this video ends, ask yourself something simple but uncomfortable. How much of your life do you truly own? And if everything you rely on can be switched off by someone else, are you actually independent at all? If this video made you think differently, don't just disappear after watching. Drop a comment with one thing you still believe people should fully own no matter how digital the world becomes. Because the answers people give to that question might quietly decide what the future looks like for all of us.